stand. So good to see everyone this morning. Good to see everybody live in person. Let's praise and glorify our King.
Good morning. Welcome to Lakewood Christian Church. My name is Bill. Definitely glad to see everyone this morning. And it's been 70 days since we had our first live video with Sean on Facebook. So if Jerry Sterner was here, I'd actually say I don't miss you guys, but I actually do miss Jerry. So if he's listening, we miss everyone. We're glad that everybody is here this morning that could be. So, I don't know if you guys woke up this morning, but you kind of looked in your closet and thought, hey, I haven't worn these church clothes in a while. If you're like me, 70 days is a good chance to put on some weight. Couldn't find the pants. Like, wow, are these still fit? Not good enough. You buy elastic waistbands and they'll work for men and different sizes.
You got your khaki sweatpants on.
Now, I did look in this morning in the audience here, and there's a few medical people that are not here, and obviously we know why. But any of you guys been watching Facebook, you saw Chris Farley come in to David Letterman's show and put on this. You've probably seen it from Facebook. And so I was going to do that this morning. I really did. I was really thinking about doing that, but I thought, we can't touch hands, we can't high-five each other. And I was worried about the medical team not being here, and I thought I might have a heart attack or put my back out, so I thought I best not do that. I'll wait for someone like Terry Shorey to do that. But
I didn't see it, so go ahead and do it.
let's wait till after. We don't get to see. We want to go on with the church service. All right. Well, a couple things. Just a little update on the church finances. We're doing fine. Okay. Our expenses are down a little bit because we're not meeting. We wasn't meeting there for a little while. But we are falling about $500 a week behind. So no big deal. We know that people's jobs have changed, and so things have changed, and we understand that. But if there's any folks that would like to kind of catch up, there's a basket here in the back, and you guys always know that Miriam, you can send her a check in the mail, send it to her address, and she'll be glad to get that put in. So, I know you guys already know this stuff. We sent out an email, but especially for the kids, just a reminder for us, we're going to want to be very careful. We know that the nursery is closed. You guys can understand why the nursery is closed. The water fountain is closed. We're going to, again, keep from trying to spread it if we can. So just, you want to be careful, not just, maybe, you might be one of those folks that may be like, hey, I'm not worried. But we just want to be careful how we cough, what we do, just so that those that may be more, risk factor, that we just want to be careful that not to spread it to them. So, all right. Teams will meet this Wednesday, May 27th, here at the church building from 6:30 to 8:30. And also, you guys can see that Gabe Walsh is recording this morning, so for YouTube replay, there will be an opportunity to do that as they send out the link here later today. So, again, it's good to see everyone that was able to make it this morning, and it's great to be together. To the music team.
We can stand again and sing. I just want to say thank you. I don't even know who everyone was that came in and got the building ready for us to be here today. Hand sanitizer and the signs and cleaning. I just want to say thank you to everyone that was involved in that we could gather today. I'm so thankful to be here with all of you. Still looking forward to the day when we can all be together and when we can hug and breathe on each other again. Won't that be fun to breathe on each other again? It seems like the world has changed and there's, a new normal in every arena of life. But aren't we glad that our Father in heaven has remained unchanged through it all? He is still holy, still faithful. He is still gracious and merciful, still loving and still just. And he is still our good Father. As James says, the Father gives good gifts and he doesn't change like the shifting shadows. He remains unchanged. Let's sing in that thankfulness this morning. We're going to pray and then sing. Dear Heavenly Father, it is so good to be together again as your people. We pray for others around the world, Christians that are gathering this morning, and maybe those who aren't quite yet, but we know that we are still your people. And we know that you are good and you have remained faithful through all of this. The ups and downs of being apart, and we just thank you that you are unchanging, God. We worship you this morning. We pray that this morning would bring you glory.
My 100 says, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations."
Freedom, give grace. morning. I think in this time of pandemic, none of us come through unscathed. I think all of you can relate to this a little bit. How many of you wake up in the morning and argue with yourself about what day it is? Yeah? Everybody's suffering from that, I think. Everything's kind of strange. Stuff being canceled. In case you didn't know it, this is Memorial Day weekend. All of the various remembrances around the city and the county have been canceled, and so this may be the only opportunity any of us have in a group format just to pause and reflect a little bit on what this day means. It was a blustery mid-November morning at the newly opened cemetery. A large crowd had gathered to observe a dedication ceremony of a new burial ground for soldiers who died in a great battle waged in the nearby countryside some 4 months earlier. 2 men were asked to speak. The first man, a renowned and highly sought-after speaker, was asked to give a keynote address addressing all of the circumstances which had brought the large crowd together that day. The second man was asked by the cemetery committee to, quote, formally set apart these grounds to their sacred use with a few appropriate remarks. The first man's speech began like this. Standing beneath this serene sky, overlooking these broad fields, now reposing from the labors of the waning year, the mighty Alleghanies firmly towering before us, the graves of our brethren beneath our feet, it is with hesitation that I raise my poor voice to break the eloquent silence of God and nature. But the duty to which you have called me must be performed. Grant me, I pray you, your indulgence and your sympathy. Indulgence indeed. The speech he gave lasted for 2 hours. Following a hymn sung by a glee club from a nearby city, the dedication speech was delivered. That speaker rose from his chair, and those around him who got a good look at him for the first time that day were later heard to remark that the gentleman's face had a ghastly color, and he was sad, mournful, almost haggard. It was later learned that he indeed was ill, and a day later was diagnosed with smallpox. But as ill as he was that gray, cloudy day, he gathered himself, straightened up his spine, and his voice rose as he delivered the following words. 47 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a battlefield of that great war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, no long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That from these honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. When he finished, he turned to sit down, and his predecessor, Edward Everett was his name, approached President Lincoln and said, "I should be glad if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes." Lincoln's words, though brief, are the ones that echo to this very day. And on this Memorial Day, we remember all those who gave their lives in service to this great nation, and from the American Revolution to the war in Afghanistan. Let each of us reflect on their sacrifice so that, paraphrasing Lincoln, from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to the cause to which all of them gave their last full measure of devotion. Let us resolve that they shall not have died in vain. May God bless the nation that we died to defend, and may we live lives worthy of their sacrifice and of his blessing. Amen.
Thanks, Chris. Those are profound words, to say the least, and a good reminder for all of us of the price that's been paid for the nation that we have and the freedom that we enjoy. As we go to prayer this morning, I'm struck by the words that we sang just a couple minutes ago, how great the Father's love for us that made a wretch his treasure. And as we come before the throne of grace this morning, we do that not as wretches first and foremost, but as his treasured possession, as Deuteronomy tells us that we are his treasured possession. There are several things that we're going to pray for, but first I want to acknowledge our healthcare workers, those that have been really on the front lines. And I wonder if they would mind standing up. If you're in the health field, if you're working in a nursing home, a hospital, a clinic, anything like that, would you stand for a minute so we can acknowledge you? Everybody's afraid to stand because nobody will want to be around them this morning. That's fine. That's great. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Come on. Oh, yes, come on. Don't be shy. Stand up. Woo-hoo. We do appreciate the work that you do and the sacrifice of putting yourself and your families at risk to do that work. So thank you very much for that. As we go to prayer this morning, most of you know, received word this past week through from Sean, an email that went out, that Mark Springer had a stroke and is in the nursing home recovering. And my understanding is that the right side of his body is what's that, Bert? It's the left side of his body. There is some paralysis there. I don't know any details about how long-term that's expected to be. Or not, but we certainly want to pray for Mark and for Marlene at this difficult time. Again, we all know the added difficulty of not being able, family can't come in to visit them, that kind of thing. And so let's pray for them this morning. Nancy Freeman is continuing to heal up from her bout with coronavirus. Rick Whirling had knee replacement surgery, his second one, here just a week and a half or so ago, and is recovering, doing well from that. Marcy Andrews, thanks God for protection and for healing, because she's also struggled with coronavirus. The Myers have something, they don't know what it is, it hasn't been confirmed to be coronavirus, but they seem to be doing better. I think we're all on the mend there, but they're still quarantined for a few more days anyway, I think. So we want to pray for Pastor Sean and Kay and their family. And then, of course, Kathleen Bollenbacher, just remembering her with just continued health challenges that she just faced there. We've got several, at least a few pregnant moms here today. Gwen is due soon, I believe in June, is that right? Does anybody know? They're not here, but does anybody know when Gwen is due? Is it June sometime? So I want to pray for them. And then Freedom International and their families, our missionaries serving there, and the other missionaries that are serving there, and the ministry of children there, and the challenges that they're facing. Also with the shutdown, the coronavirus, and some of the challenges that they're facing now. We are going to go to a time of greeting. we're gonna separate the men from the boys, spiritually speaking. We're gonna see who hugs by faith and who hugs by sight. No, I think I'd be violating the law to encourage that. I don't know where all that is at, but greet one another, at least wave, say hello, find somebody you don't know, shout across the room. Unclean, but we're glad you're here, all right? So let's stand and do that. All right, go ahead, greet one another.
Glad to see that nobody out of force of habit wore their pajamas this morning. It is good to be here. Sean lamenting he wishes he could be here this morning. He said that we should, in his absence, go around the room and have everybody say something that they love about Sean. So let's do that. It'll be the 2 minute, not the 2 hour. But yeah, no, it's great to be back and looking forward to when everybody can join us, and we'll see how long that takes. Don't know where this is going. Wanted to also share a little something here, a little piece of news that happened over the break here. The shutdown. Kaylee Dameron is a published author now, so there's her there. I've not read it, but I'm planning to. So we got a couple authors around here, and I think you're the youngest though. So maybe Ellie can get working, publish something soon. But congratulations to you, kid. You might be wondering just about the decision to meet again and whether or not we've gone back and forth really for a couple weeks and just trying to figure out how best to do this. We want to be sensitive to what's going on at the government level and the local level and just talking to people here and trying to figure out how best to handle this. And hope we've come across kind of the right path to take here. Of course, we can't wait till there's zero risk to meet again. There's never going to be a time when there's zero risk. And so hopefully the trend's moving in the right direction that we can begin meeting like this. We are planning to meet regularly from now on with whoever's able to. We want to be understanding of people who can't or feel they can't or have concerns about that. Just to be really understanding of that. We're going to kind of keep some of these precautions, leaving the rows empty, not having greeters, not having cookies, that kind of thing. We'll hopefully be able to phase those things out gradually, hopefully sooner rather than later. You might know that they've divided businesses into what's essential and non-essential, and in some states churches are listed like at the same level of non-essential, along with nail salons and gyms and that kind of thing. The question is always essential for what? Essential for a bustling economy, as if that's the most important thing. Obviously it's important, but again, it's hard to measure what's essential based on just the economy, and I don't think that's the right way of. The church really is. This is to quote Pastor Mike. The church is the greatest show on earth. There's just nothing like the body of Christ. And we've made do here for a couple months, and it's been fine for a time, but we are excited to gather again. I think that's the way that we're meant to be as the body of Christ, is to live in community with each other and be in close contact. And so just trying to strike that balance. We need to be together. It's important that we are to help spur one another on and hold each other accountable and grow together. That's all important to be physically present together. But also we want to be sensitive and don't want to put anybody at risk unnecessarily. So anyway, if you have questions or concerns about any of that, again, we know there are some people that can't be here because maybe they're working on the front lines, they know they've been exposed and don't want to put anybody else at risk. Other people just have a concern that they might get something because of conditions that they have. And we just want to be really understanding of all that and work through it together. But it is wonderful to be here and a little different, obviously, but better than being out in the parking lot, I think. Although that was good for that time too. All right, this morning we're going to have a little bit of just a standalone message, and we'll look to start a series going through, I believe, an Old Testament book here in the next couple weeks. passage will come up on the screen. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." If we said this about ourselves, in our own brilliance, in our own strength, we are the light of the world, that would be the height of arrogance. But we didn't make this claim about ourselves. Jesus made this claim about us, about those who follow him, those who trust him. And he wasn't saying that we are the light of the world in and of ourselves. In fact, in another place in John's Gospel, chapter 8, he says, "I am the light of the world." So I think it makes sense to say that we are the light of the world to the extent that we reflect his light. He is the ultimate light of the world, and we are the light in that we reflect his righteousness and his love and his grace. And so you think of like the little reflectors on the back of your bicycle. We're more like that. We're reflectors of the light. He's the ultimate light, the source of light, the original source, giving off light from within himself. And it's to bounce off us and shine out into the world. The world is darkened by sin and suffering, strife. And there are times when the darkness seems a bit deeper, a little bit darker, more difficult to penetrate. Periods of war, periods of genocide, suffering, crimes against children. These are times, again, when the world is especially dark and in need of the light, needing the church to be who Christ has called us to be. And over the centuries, Christians have shined the light of Christ in the midst of tragedy. And I'm going to give you just a little survey of times when the church has just really shown out in a dark period. In the first couple centuries after Christ, there were several plagues in the Roman Empire. And at one point, in one of these plagues, perhaps a third of the population died. Christians were widely known during that time for bravely caring for each other as well as outsiders. And I'm going to share a quote with you. This is from a book called The Triumph of Christianity by Rodney Stark. And he's talking specifically about these periods of pandemic, these plagues during the early centuries. He says, what went on during the epidemics was only an intensification of what went on every day among Christians. Indeed, the impact of Christian mercy was so evident that in the 4th century, when the Emperor Julian attempted to restore paganism, he exhorted the pagan priesthood to compete with the Christian charities. In a letter to the high priest of Galatia, Julian urged the distribution of grain and wine to the poor, nothing that the impious Galileans, Christians, in addition to their own, support ours, and it is shameful that our poor should be wanting our aid. But there was little or no response to Julian's proposal because there were no doctrines and no traditional practices for the pagan priest to build upon. Christians believed in life everlasting. At most, pagans believed in an unattractive existence in the underworld. Faith mattered. I think it's really interesting. The Christians were known for their great care for one another. People tried to copy it, but they didn't have no other worldview could hold up that kind of love and compassion and care. Indeed, the field of nursing is, care for the sick, developed out of a Christian worldview. Joel and Brooke taught on this to our teens last year, I believe, and showed just how just the whole profession, the whole vocation of nursing arose out of a worldview with Christ, where teach that all people were made in God's image. So in the early days of the nursing profession, that wasn't a way to make a lot of money, and it was dangerous. You could catch something that your patients had, but this is something that, again, came out of an understanding that Jesus healed the sick. Jesus touched the lepers. Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan taking care of a man who had been attacked. And so nursing has come out of that tradition. It is interesting when you think about it, just on a side note, some of the things that we've seen in this crisis really do affirm the goodness, the truthfulness of Christianity. I don't know if you've picked that up. For example, it's clear that everybody thinks that every life matters. The whole reason for quarantining and being careful and social distancing and all of that is because people recognize that every life matters. That doesn't make sense in any worldview besides Christianity, where we understand that people are made in God's image. If atheism is true, we're just specks, we're just particles, we're just random accidents of nature. The fact that every life has value, again, shouts we're made in God's image. The importance of healthcare workers, everybody's acknowledging, calling them healthcare heroes, and they are. They are because of, again, it flows out of that biblical worldview of compassion for the least of these. Christians have risen to the occasion to shine light in the darkest times. A couple more modern examples here. You may know the name Corrie ten Boom, that her family hid Jews during the Nazi Holocaust. She was a light in the darkness. Do you know that also in the concentration camps, she and her sister Betsy led Bible study every night, the Bible they had smuggled. These barracks that were flea infested, and they led worship. Did you know that after the war, Corrie and those that she worked with set up special facilities for survivors of the concentration camps to continue to minister to those ongoing psychological needs and to give them a chance to hear the gospel? You'd go on and talk about the tens of thousands of Christians who traveled to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and other hurricanes to feed people, to share the gospel, to help rebuild homes. Have you heard about the Christian doctor from the Congo, Denis Mukwege, who won the Nobel Prize in 2018 for his work helping women who have been brutalized by armed rebels, building a hospital, taking care, ministering to their bodies, their physical issues, medically, but also dealing with the soul. My prayer, one of my prayers during this time, is that God would be glorified through the church. That during these dark hours of sickness and death and loneliness and isolation and unemployment and addiction and hopelessness, that we would shine out. And while politicians look to capitalize on the moment and smear the other side and prop themselves up and expand their power, instead that we would, as men and women who follow Jesus, that we would rise to the occasion and be a light through our work, through our service, through our joy, through our giving, through our volunteering, that we would shine a light in the darkness. Christ has purchased us by his blood. We belong to him. We've shared that quote before, that it's an Abraham Kuyper quote. He says that there's not one square inch in all of creation over which Christ does not say, mine. Everything, the whole world belongs to Christ. But that's true of my life. That's true of your life. Everything, every moment belongs to him. If you've put your trust in Christ, if you've been born again, it all belongs to him. And that includes quarantine. That includes coming out of quarantine. We've got to do it all to the glory of God. And so my title for this morning is Coming Out of Quarantine to the Glory of God. I'm going to read a couple of scripture passages for you. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1. Paul writes, as a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Live a life worthy of the calling you have received. What a high calling. And we're to live a life worthy of it. Philippians 1:27. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Now notice it says whatever happens, not as long as things are going well, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of Christ, worthy of the gospel of Christ. Or just on Sunday mornings, or just when you're around other Christians and they're kind of, keeping tabs. Whatever happens. When you're alone, when you're in dark times, when you're going through a pandemic. 1 Thessalonians 2:11 and 12. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God who calls you into his kingdom and glory. We need to be encouraged, comforted, urged. 1 Corinthians 10:31, so whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do it all to the glory of God. So each new day, each new role, any job that you take, any season of life, a question that we ought to ask is, how do I honor Christ in this? How can I live in a way that's worthy of the gospel of Christ in this specific season, on this particular day, in this particular role? When I became a dad for the first time, how do I honor Christ in this? When I become a grandpa someday, how do I honor Christ in this? If you take a job as a teacher, how do I honor Christ as a teacher? How do I honor Christ as an engineer? What does it look like to honor Jesus as a stay-at-home mom? As a coach, as a doctor, as a contractor, as a grandma or grandpa? How do I honor Christ in this? And as the passage, the 1 Corinthians passage there says, whether you eat or drink in every activity, how do I honor Christ in my eating and my drinking? How do I honor Christ when I'm writing a paper for school, when I'm paying my taxes, when I'm playing a sport, when I'm tucking my kids in bed, when I'm mowing the lawn, when I'm going on vacation, when I'm washing dishes, when I'm changing diapers? How can I glorify Christ in this? How can I live a life worthy of God in this? It's not just for Sundays. It's not just when I'm around other Christians. In every moment, in every season. When I'm an old man in a nursing home, how do I honor Christ in that? Going through quarantine, shut down, locked at home with your family, how do I honor Christ in this? And now coming out of quarantine, how do I honor Christ in this? How can we as Christians, coming out now, things starting to open up, how do we honor Christ in this? And I would say we have to give it thought. We have to give it consideration. We can't just think, oh, it'll all just click into place. It'll just kind of all naturally work out. I know for myself, if I rely on myself, if I just wing it, go with the flow, so to speak, things don't go well. Here's a little comic that I'm going to share with you. This is from Adam Ford. The first phrase, it's called Trust Your Heart, Sweetie. The mom says, she's talking to her son, she says, this is a difficult decision. In times like this, you have to learn to trust your heart. Trust your heart, sweetie. And the next frame, the boy says, okay, heart, what's it going to be? And the third frame, a little bit creepy, the heart says, sin. And the fourth, last frame, the boy is excited. Yes, his mom counseled him to listen to his heart. He's going to listen to his heart and do the selfish thing. If I trust my heart, if I just kind of go with the flow and do what comes natural, coming out of quarantine, I'm going to be selfish. It's not going to go well for me or the people around me because I'm going to do it selfishly. And the world is encouraging. I don't know if you've picked up on that. The world is encouraging when we went into quarantine. Oh, and now it's time for a couple weeks. You get to just stay home and watch Netflix all day. What? That's not what we're made for. That's not who Christ has called us to be. And now that quarantining is starting to end, starting to wrap up, I can't wait to get out and party. I'm going to live this, make up for lost time and pack all of it in, the stuff that I missed out on, the parties, the hookups that I missed out on over the last 2 months. I got to make up for lost time and, get extra wild. This morning I want to give you just a few encouragements. I'm going to give you 7. I'm going to go through rather quickly. But what does it look like to honor Christ as we come out of lockdown, out of quarantine? How do we do that to the glory of God? And again, it is a little bit tricky. I had a picture up there of a door. I wish it was that easy. I wish it was just like, now the quarantine's over, and now we just get to come out and back to normal. But obviously it's this, we don't know how long this is going to last, how gradual it's going to be. We'll have to move backwards at some point, hopefully not. And you'll notice these are all just small things. I mean, I wish you know, there's always a part of us that, like, I wish I could just do something big. I wish I was the one that, like, you know, developed the vaccine or did something really significant, raised millions of dollars or fed thousands of people or something like that. And I just think, you know what, sometimes that's motivated more by, you know, just our own pride. Usually when God calls us to do, you know, something, you know, just to be the light in the darkness, it's just small things. It starts in our heart with our character, and just starts in just a small circle with our family, people, neighbors, people who live on our street, our small community. How can I be a light, you know, even if it's a less significant way? So the first one here is just to be sacrificial in your love for others. Be sacrificial in your love for others. One way to shine light in the darkness is to be sacrificial. The worst thing that we could do now is say, it's all about me, making up for lost time. I wanted to do all these things, and I didn't get to, and so now it's time to, again, pack it all in. I've been stuck at home, need to make up for lost time, getting what I want. We've got that mentality, the binge-watching mentality, the binge pleasure mentality, and already people have been doing this. Going to the beach, having big parties to make up for the lost time. And I would just say, if you're trying to follow Christ, that would be the worst thing you could do, to say, I deserve, you know, a little make up for lost time. Instead, Christ has called us to lay down our lives. Jesus said that this is where life is found. If you want to find life, you lose it. And that's true all the time, but including now. Now is the time to give up our lives, to lay our lives down for one another. That's where the good life is found, not in extra big parties or extra long binges of something that we've wanted for a while and couldn't have. The world thinks freedom, true freedom, is just doing what I want, doing what, you know, according to my desires, whatever I want. But biblically, freedom is the freedom to be who God made you to be who He's called you to be. And so I think we need to resist this urge to just make it all about ourselves. I know we need to resist that urge. It's not honoring to God. It's not good for us. It makes a habit of something that we don't want to get locked into. So again, time to lay down our lives. I'm going to read a short passage here from Ephesians. I already read the beginning of this. The next couple points come from this passage, Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Paul says, as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. How do I do that? Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. How do you live a life worthy of the calling you received? Man, it'd be great to discover the vaccine, to develop the vaccine. It'd be great to do something really, really big. Paul says, here's how you live a life worthy of the calling that you've received. Be humble. Be humble. And Sean shared several messages while we were, on Sunday mornings over Facebook about humility. I just think this is such an important thing for us to continue to hammer on, because it's so easy to think we know it all. I'm going to read a section from a blog that I read this past week. It humbled me. The author is Tim Challies. He says, what do we do now? There have been many calls in recent days for humanity to awaken to our power and potential. We can conquer the disease. We can go back to normal. We can establish a new and better normal. We can fix the economy. We can transform the economy. The calls come from every part of the ideological spectrum. No one ever wants to waste a crisis. But I'm convinced the crisis will be wasted if it doesn't humble us, if it doesn't force us to acknowledge our weakness, our inability, our lack of knowledge, our lack of wisdom. We are so very weak, yet so very proud. Consider, he writes, we still don't know many of the most basic facts about the virus. We don't know exactly where or how it originated. We don't know all the ways it spreads. We don't know how contagious it is. We don't know if or how it is affected by light or heat. We don't know if it is seasonal. We don't know why some people remain asymptomatic while others die. We don't know what proportion of the population has already had it. We don't know who has it now. We don't know who is immune to it. We don't know how to make a vaccine. We don't know the best way to stop its spread. In fact, we don't even know if stopping its spread is the best strategy. So all of these things we just don't know. And so all the more reason for humility. Again, Sean's encouraged us about humility towards God, humility towards each other. I just think, again, in light of all these things we don't know, chance for us to grow in humility. Next part, again, straight out of the passage, is to be patient. Be completely humble and patient, humble and gentle. Be patient. Be patient. This is something I've been working on during the shutdown at home. I want to grow in patience. Living in the flesh, it's so easy to be impatient, to be grouchy, to be whiny, to complain. The Bible says that patience is a fruit of the Spirit, something that God wants to produce in you by His Spirit as you grow. And so as we come out of quarantine, to the glory of God, we've got to be patient. Patient with the reopening. Perhaps you've seen, there have been news stories about people attacking clerks or workers at stores where services aren't offered that used to be or should be, or products aren't available that they thought would be, and like physically attacking people when things aren't, when they're not kind of getting their way. And I think there is that impatience in all of us. I want to do the things that I want to do. You've got to be patient. You've got to wait. There might come a time to be righteously angry, and but even then, in patience to work for our freedoms and our rights again. We need to be patient, not only with the reopening, but patient with each other. And here I want to move on to the next, number 4, to be unified with your church family. Again, the passage there says, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. I really appreciated what Sean wrote. I don't know if you read the email where he gave some of the guidelines that we would have for this morning. But what he wrote there at the end, just to be understanding of each other. There are people all across the spectrum here, even at Aletheia, even among Christians who share so much in common. There's just different perspectives. Some people would have met every Sunday for the last 2 months and not missed a beat. They weren't worried about it. Other people are much more cautious, right? And then there's people all over in the middle, too. And the temptation is always to look at people who have different ideas, who, live differently, and to be suspicious, to mock. Jesus said in John 13, by this will all men know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. How important it is to keep unity during this time. If we're really going to shine out the light in the darkness, we have to say, look, we're all over the map on how we're approaching this virus thing. But we're going to stay united. Whatever the difference is in how we look at this, we're going to love one another. We're going to serve one another. We're going to defer to one another. If I lean more on the end of, hey, I'm willing to open up and I'm willing to hug somebody or whatever, and I see somebody else that's wearing a mask, I can't mock them or laugh, and I have no idea the whole mentality that went behind their decision to wear a mask. And if on the other hand, I'm more concerned and cautious, and I look at somebody who's just out there willy-nilly, doing the normal thing, I can't mock them or, shake my head in disgust and that kind of thing. Can't vilify people who see things differently and make different choices. So again, it's just how can I lay my life down for my brothers and sisters in Christ? How can I defer to them? How can I bear with them and be patient with them? How can we keep the unity of the Spirit? There are so many differences among us. What kind of worship songs we prefer, how we school our children, what movies we're willing to watch or not willing to watch, how involved our kids are in extracurricular activities, whether we live in the city or in the country, how healthy we eat, what we allow our kids to do, how many kids we have, how we spend our money. All these are differences. And we can't look at those differences as opportunities to mock or vilify or shake our head, but instead, to love, respect one another, to bear with one another, to encourage one another. We have to resist that urge.